Welcome to Action Utah's How to Vote by Mail in Utah. My name is Andrea Himoff, and I'm the Executive Director of Action Utah. I'll be your moderator today, and I appreciate all of you for tuning in to listen about how to vote in Utah. I also want to thank our co-sponsor, Voterise, for helping us bring together this event and provide information about mail-in ballot voting, including common misperceptions, misconceptions, and mistakes that individuals often make with mail-in ballots in Utah. We'll also go over some of the changes to election procedures for the 2020 primary election coming up on June 30th. Action Utah's mission is to empower Utahns from both sides of the aisle to get civically engaged and impact the issues you care about most. And we believe one of the most important ways to get your voice heard is to vote. Utah has utilized mail-in ballot voting since 2013, and vote by mail has become the primary means of voting in every county. That means Utah is ahead of the curve compared to most of the country coming into coronavirus, but also in understanding the impacts of mail-in ballot voting. We'd like to provide this opportunity for Utahns to learn more about how to cast your vote by mail and clear up any confusions to ensure you can successfully cast your ballot on June 30th and beyond. For those of you who were hoping to join us live, we apologize that we were not able to technologically get this panel discussion on live, but we will be answering questions as we go along and hope that we will be able to cover all of your questions about this issue. We also invite you to reach out to county clerks and to election officials and specialists to get your questions answered so that you can successfully cast your ballot in time. Okay, so without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. Daniel Wade is in charge of candidate services and voter registration at the Weber County Elections Office. And Hope Zitting-Goeckeritz is the executive director at Voterise. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, at Action Utah, we talk about voting as being one of the most important ways to get civically engaged and get your voices heard. But I would really love to start out by hearing from each of you about why you think voting matters. So Daniel, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Voting is actually the very easiest way for anybody to actually get involved with the political process. Not everybody's comfortable making phone calls from candidates. Not everybody wants to go knock on doors. Not everybody has the means to contribute money to a campaign. But by simply voting, that's how you get involved, and that's how you make sure that your voice is heard.
Thank you. And then Hope, what do you think? Is it important to vote? Why does voting matter?
Yeah, absolutely. So Voterise goes into a lot of classrooms and, well, pre-COVID and on-the-ground events. And one of the things that we hear all the time is, I don't need to register to vote. My vote doesn't matter. Wrong. It does. It really does. And like Daniel said, it is the basic way to get involved with the political discourse, whether that's on a city level, which is important, a county, also important, state, federal, all of that's important. Especially local elections as well too. I mean, those impact you so directly and usually much more quickly than those races that get all the attention on the federal level. So it's important to vote in both state, local, all of the elections. So it's a way for your voice to be heard.
Thank you. So, Hope, I would love to hear more about the work that you do at Voterise, and then we can jump into some of these questions about mail-in ballot voting.
Yeah, so Voterise is a small nonprofit based here in Utah. We're a 501c3, which means we're nonpartisan. And our mission is to turn out and engage and register those individuals who historically have been left out of the electoral process. So that means youth, 18 to 29-year-olds, as well as underrepresented communities. And that includes people of color, women, LGBTQIA+, impoverished communities, all of those. So we have a lot of different ways we engage and register those people, from going to events and classrooms to also like digitally registering people as well too. Voterise actually has a text platform, and on top of that, actually going through our website as well, which those resources are what we've been relying on lately. And so we do a lot of work within the community, these communities that are, right in our backyard, because we want to make sure that everybody has a say.
Thank you. We love the work that you guys do. Can you walk us through the normal voter registration process in Utah. I know that during the 2020 legislative session, deadlines for voter registration were changed for the state. And so it's a little different this year. And we will get into some of those changes that are happening specifically for the June primary election due to coronavirus. But can you walk us through that normal procedure? What are deadlines? How and when do Utahns need to register to vote? Who can register to vote, etc.?
Yeah, so in order to register to vote, so on Voterise's platform, it takes less than 3 minutes. Less than 3 minutes. I mean, that's more time for you to drink a cup of coffee. You can do it just like that. But you have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to have residency in Utah at least 30 days prior to the election. And you do have to be 18 on or before election day. However, if you're 17 and want to vote in the primary and you'll be 18 on or before election day, you can still vote while 17. And you can actually pre-register in the state of Utah as well too. So you can be 16, 17 pre-registering to vote. And like I said, it takes less than 3 minutes. We just go through the form. You know, it's really basic information like your name, your physical address, and then you sign, date, and you'll be all good to go. And of course, like Andrea mentioned, there's a little bit of a difference in how this election will be taking place on June 30th. Earlier this year, House Bill 36 passed the legislature, which made it so this primary will be mostly conducted by mail. So what that means is that we've had mail-in ballots for a while now. About 90% of our voters actually do take part in mail-in ballots. Other than San Juan County, that there won't be any kind of in-person voting. So that means that when you get your ballot, you fill it out, you send it back, you'll be all good to go. And you will need to register to vote or update your registration through June 19th by 5 p.m.
Great. And what is a reason that a person might want to check on their voter registration or update their voter registration before June 19th or up through June 19th?
Yeah, so there are 3 different reasons why you would need to really check that and update it. One of them being if you moved, so you've got to change your address. You want to make sure your ballot finds you. Number 2, if your name changes, so maybe, if you got married, divorced, if your name changes, go ahead and change that. And then if you want to register and affiliate with a political party.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Daniel, let's move over to you. Can you start out by telling us about the work that you do in the Weber County Elections Office?
Do a little bit of everything, but my primary focus at this time of year is voter registration. So all those registrations that Hope and Voterise are gathering, they're coming directly to me and the other election specialists in Utah, and we are processing every single one of those forms by hand. We verify all the information on those forms to make sure that it's actually coming from a real person. Ballots started to arrive in mailboxes this week, so starting tomorrow, we're actually going to start processing those by mail ballots that get returned back to our office. The election's on its way.
Great. Daniel, can you walk us through some general information about mail-in ballot voting? And I think it could be very helpful even to start with, what does a mail-in ballot even look like? If you have some samples you could show us, that would be a great starting point.
I do. So about 3 weeks prior to each election day, every registered voter is automatically mailed a ballot. It's going to come in an envelope that looks similar to this. Every county will have kind of the same process. Cosmetically, the ballot or the envelopes might look a little bit different. So this is Weber County's ballot, but all of those envelopes are going to have this official vote by mail and this election mail on there. So if you see an envelope like this, please don't throw it away. This has your ballot. Inside this envelope, there's going to be 3 different things for you. You're going to have the physical ballot that comes already folded. We also include an insert with all of our ballots that give you information on deadlines, where you can return your ballots, etc. And then one of the most important things in that envelope is your returned envelope. Any ballot that's returned back by mail has to be returned in the envelope that we sent to you. And again, envelopes are going to look a little bit different from county to county, just because cosmetically we have our own designs. Shout out for purple in Weber County because of Weber State, but Wildcats.
Great. That's a really good place to start, because I think it's important for people to recognize what is coming in the mail and when it's coming, to set that envelope aside and make a special note of taking care of voting through that. Daniel, You've mentioned that the ballots are being mailed out starting already and up through about a week before the election. What if people don't receive a ballot? And are there any folks who need to request a ballot?
So no one has to request a ballot because we are a vote by mail state. Again, all active registered voters are automatically mailed a ballot at least 3 weeks prior. This primary election is slightly different because the only voters that are automatically receiving a ballot are those that are registered as Republican, registered as Democrat, or if they're unaffiliated and they have requested to receive the Democratic ballot. If you're registered with any other party, such as Green, Libertarian, Constitution, Independent American, United Utah, you are not going to automatically receive a ballot for the primary election. Now that's completely different again in November. General election, every registered voter gets that ballot. What was the second part of your question, please?
What do people do if they don't receive a ballot?
Thank you. So because the registration deadline is the 19th, if you have not received a ballot in the mail by the 18th of June, we're asking you to contact your local elections office because that'll give you plenty of time to correct any mistakes that there might be and give us plenty of time to get a ballot out to you. If you are registered to vote and we mailed a ballot to you and for whatever reason that ballot did not get to you, you can contact your local elections office up until 7 days prior to election day, and we can always re-mail a ballot back to you. The final part of that is if you don't get a ballot in the mail, you can always go on election day to some of those counties, and we'll discuss this a little bit later. You can go and get a replacement ballot on election day.
Great. And what are some tips for people to help them to fill out their ballots properly?
Good question. So the most important thing to know with the ballot, and I'll show this right here, is when you make your selection you need to fill in the oval completely using either blue or black pen. Don't just do a cross through the oval, don't do an X, don't circle the voter's name. We need to have the oval. If that oval is not filled in, then when these ballots go through the scanner will not read that vote. If you make a lot of markings all over these timing marks and those types of things, it's going to also disrupt the ballot through the scanner. And so keep it clean. Don't write us notes. Don't tell us how much you love us. Just mark the oval next to the candidate, and that's really all you need to do.
Do people do that? Write you notes about how much they love you?
You know, it's actually once the ballots actually come out of the envelope, we start putting through the scanner. That's one of our favorite parts of elections because we get a lot of notes written to us by voters. Not always kind notes, a lot of opinions. So we get a good chuckle out of that, but I advise you, please don't write on your ballots.
That's a great tip. Can you also tell us about the signature on the envelope? That's an important piece that's in every county, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a return envelope. So on the back part of this, there's a box there that you need to sign provide your signature. Can't be missed. There's a big arrow there for you. So the purpose of the signature is because you're not voting in person and you're not showing us a physical ID, the way that we validate that this ballot came from the legitimate candidate or legitimate voter is that we compare the signature that you provided on this envelope with the signatures that we have on file in our database that are taken mainly from your registration forms. We also take signatures from the driver's license division, and in some cases we will also save signatures from previous ballots. So we can save up to 5 different signatures for each voter in our database. So it's crucial. If you do not sign this ballot envelope, this ballot will not get counted.
Great, and that's such an important security measure as well. Daniel, it's not as applicable in the primary election, but at Action Utah, we often talk about down ballot voting and the importance of voting for every item on the ballot. Can you talk a little bit about what down ballot voting is?
Sure. So particularly I'll just kind of show you, in Weber County, this is the Republican primary ballot this year. So there's 4 races. Come November in the general election, we're going to have 3 columns on this piece of paper, and also there's going to be races on the back of that election, on that ballot as well. It's very long. So the first The first race will be president. Then we go to Senate, Congress, and we'll go to governor, the state races, then you go to your county races, then it gets down to your local school board, and then we have judges. And what that down ballot means is a lot of people are really gung-ho on voting for governor or president. And then they're going to go to the next race, which might be Senate or Congress, and they're going to go to the governors. But by the time they get to that second or that third column of races, and people start to get what we call ballot fatigue, and they just stop voting. So they eliminate a lot of times not voting for their local candidate or their local judges and those types of things. So it's really important that if you really want your voice to be heard, that you vote every single race on that ballot. I will say at this point also, though, if there is a race that you do not mark on a ballot, that does not invalidate your entire ballot. You can vote just one race and leave everything else blank, and we will tabulate the result for that one race or those two races that you actually mark.
Great. And there's also another change that happens this year based on legislation that passed in 2020 to eliminate the option for straight ticket ballot voting.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit and what that means?
Sure. So in the past, the very first question you were asked on the ballot is you had the option of voting straight party, which means you could just mark a box next to Republican or just a box next to Democrat, whatever your choice was. And that would automatically select every candidate from that party on the rest of your ballots. So you really only had to mark one race, and then you were done. It would automatically do all the rest. That has been done away with in Utah for 2020. So now you do have to literally mark next to each candidate that you want to vote for.
Right. And that doesn't eliminate your option to vote for all candidates in a single party, right?
That is correct. You can vote for any candidate from any party, any combination.
Okay. And do you know some of the reasons why that was eliminated?
A lot of the reason it was for the ballot fatigue. People would just mark Republican or Democrat, and they would never vote anything else. And when you get to our local school boards, they are nonpartisan races. So there isn't a Democrat, there isn't a Republican, there isn't a Green candidate for school boards. So you never have a say in that if you just do straight party.
Right, or the ballot questions or ballot.
Exactly, ballot questions. All the 2018, the year of the proposition. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's really helpful for people to understand that change, that some people have been used to using that option in the past, and they can still continue voting for the same party if they choose to do so. Another question here, once somebody has filled out their ballot and they've put it in their ballot return envelope and they've signed their ballot return envelope, how do they then cast their ballot?
So they have two options, so the first option that they have in any county is to return it back to us through the post office. The one difference between county to county is some counties will actually pay the return postage on that envelope. Weber County is one of those counties that does not. So you want to pay attention on the returned envelope that you have. So for instance, on ours, it says postage is required. If you're in Davis County or Salt Lake County or some of the other counties, they pay postage, so it will tell you no postage necessary. So just pay attention to that and make sure if it requires a stamp that you placed a first-class stamp on that. The other way, which I think is probably the much better way to do it, is to just deposit this for free in any one of the secure ballot drop boxes that are located throughout each county. In Weber County, for instance, we have 21 ballot drop boxes in just our county. They're located at all public libraries and at every city hall. On the average distance between a voter and a drop box is 2 miles. Those boxes are all outside and they are accessible 24 hours a day. And again, it's free to utilize those drop boxes. And if you have any concerns with ballots getting lost in the mail or what may happen in that situation, any ballot that is returned back to a secure ballot drop box, those ballots are picked up directly by staff members of the elections office and brought right back to our office. They never go through a third party.
Great. And what happens, let's say a person is I'm in Summit County, for instance, postage is required in my county. What if I drop my ballot into the Postal Service without a stamp by mistake, or if I don't have a stamp that I can access and I only have a choice of Postal Service, what happens to my ballot then?
The post office will still deliver those ballots to the elections office.
Great, thank you. Okay, one more question for you, Daniel, and then I really want to dive into what you just mentioned, some of those security issues around mail-in ballot voting, but But first, we have mail-in ballot voting and we also have absentee ballots. Can you explain the difference between them?
The term by mail and absentee are used interchangeably quite a bit, but there is a very big difference. So the absentee ballot is specifically for someone who needs a ballot mailed someplace different than where they live on a temporary basis. So if you're a student or a religious missionary, or you're in the military and you're stationed in Europe, or you're in another state, you would want to put in an absentee ballot request, and that allows you to remain registered to vote in Utah, where your permanent residence is, but that allows us to mail that ballot anywhere else. And we can mail ballots anywhere else in the world. If you are actually living overseas, or if you are an active member of the military, you can also request to receive your ballot by email. Email is actually a great option for our military members and our overseas, because sending ballots to China, to Japan, sometimes can take a long time for that transaction to take place. So that email is a great option, but all that would be taken care of through an absentee ballot request. And on the new voter registration form that Utah just brought out a couple of weeks ago, there is a spot specifically on that registration form that says, if you're overseas, if you're military, let us know where you'd like that ballot mailed, and we'll take care of it from there.
Great. So you have already mentioned a couple of the security mechanisms that are in place to ensure voting integrity. How secure is mail-in ballot voting?
By-mail ballot voting is very secure. We have a lot of policies and procedures that are in place. We have a lot of checks and balances that not only make it secure, but it also allows the voter to only vote once, which is very important. And it also guarantees a secret ballot for each voter. Each voter in Utah is guaranteed by the Constitution of having a secret ballot. And a lot of these policies and procedures are in place in legal code in the state of Utah that the legislature has put together, and each county also has additional resources and processes that they use as well to maintain all of these privacy and secure measures.
As I mentioned at the start, mail-in ballot voting has been in Utah now for a few years, since 2013. Is there a report of voter fraud linked to mail-in ballot voting in Utah?
No. Voter fraud under any method of voting, whether it be in person or whether it be by mail, is minuscule. We'll have cases periodically where you may have a father who votes and signs the ballot for his son or his daughter and sends that back into us, but those are always caught. We mitigate it, but there's never been a case in Utah where there's been rampant fraud, or really any fraud whatsoever in vote by mail.
Thank you. A question for both of you. Do you perceive that there are any common misconceptions or confusions around mail-in ballot voting?
Sure. This year particularly, there's a lot of spotlights been put on it. It's getting a lot of attention right now. There is the misconception that voting by mail does not require ID. That's completely false. Important thing to recognize about that aspect is, regardless of the manner that you vote, whether it's in person or by mail, the first step is you have to be registered to vote. If you want to get a ballot in the mail, you have to be a registered voter. And as I mentioned earlier, every piece of information that's provided on that registration form is verified by us, including your driver's license number or the social security number that you provide. That is all verified. And then again, we mentioned the signature on the ballot envelope. That is the second piece of the security part of that. The second most common concern that people are having right now is they tend to think that they can take the ballot that they receive in the mail, and they can just make 55 copies of it, fill it all out, and mail them all back in, and there's 55 votes. Doesn't work that way. There are a lot of security features that are embedded into the paper that we use to print ballots on that cannot be replicated by a regular printer that you have sitting in your den or on your kitchen counter.
That's very helpful. Have you seen misconceptions as well in your work?
Yeah, Daniel really hit all of it on the head. And honestly, I have to give a shout out to his office, because he's been posting graphics, memes on his social media pages about common misconceptions, like, photocopying ballots, etc. And again, it's kind of a hot topic issue during this election, and just, mitigating and just completely dispelling those myths is the number one thing. It's completely secure to vote by mail.
Okay, and
And if I may add, sorry, if I may add to that, I cannot take any responsibility for the names. That is my coworker, Megan. She's the one that's done all that. So thank you, Megan, for
I was gonna let you have it.
that. I won't take it. I'm not that creative.
I think they're great.
it's so important, and voter education in this process is so, so important. You guys are doing a great job, and I appreciate so many of the county elections offices around the state who are doing the same thing and really trying to get the word out about good information for voters. Are there any common mistakes that people make when filling out their ballots that we should make people aware of?
Again, not filling in the oval. If you just put a cross or just an X through that, a lot of times that scanner will not read it. The good part about that is if there's a mark that the scanner can't read or is not quite sure what it is, those ballots get rejected out of the scanner, and then we actually do an adjudication process where we actually physically, two members of staff will actually look at that and say, is this a candidate they really wanted? And then we can make that determination. But really just keeping that ballot itself clean and just doing that oval next to the name you want is the best thing that you can do. The second most common mistake, honestly, is they just do not sign. They miss the arrow. They do not sign the envelope.
Let's switch tacks and talk about the upcoming June election, because it is an extraordinary election due to some of the changes made through the coronavirus pandemic to protect public health. What do people need to know about election procedure changes for 2019? What year am I in? The 2020 primary election.
The biggest change would just be that there will not be in-person voting on election day, the primary election. Normally in the past, you can go to any polling location on election day and just register right there if you're not registered and get a ballot. I want to just make really clear that for the primary election this year, the June 19th date that Hope has talked about as the deadline, that is not a suggestion. That is a hard deadline. If you are not registered to vote by June 19th, you will not be given a ballot in the primary election in June.
Thank you. That is unusual because there's no provisional ballots this election to be able to file same day.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
No same day voter registration.
Yeah, that June 19th, that's all online, in person, mail-in. June 19th, hard deadline.
Yes. This is what I tell people is this is not the year to procrastinate.
Absolutely. Weber and a handful of counties are doing some drive-up voting, right? Drive-through.
Right.
What is that?
So in place of so any registered voter that does not receive a ballot in the mail, we will offer on election day it's called drive-through drive-up polling location. And basically how that works is you're going to drive up, you're going to stay in your car. We are going to make sure that you're registered to vote. We're going to check your ID. And then we are going to provide you a ballot and an envelope exactly like the one you received in the mail. And you're going to be given that paper ballot and a pen, and you're going to be instructed to drive away, go to some other location, fill that out in person, sign the envelope, and then drop that ballot in a drop box. You will not be getting out of your car. There will not be voting machines located on election day. You're simply getting a replacement ballot. The one caveat to that, or the one that I want to just mention, is that if you are a member of the disabled community and you have difficulty or are not able to vote a paper ballot, please call your local elections officials starting today. We will provide in-person voting accommodations for our disabled voters.
That's very important as well. How has early voting changed for this election?
It's not happening. That's how it's changed. It's vote by mail, or you go to a drive-through on one of those 5 or 6 counties in Utah.
I do have a list of those counties as well too. So Salt Lake, Davis, Weber, Tooele, Iron, and Utah.
Thank you.
Yes. And if
Yeah. So if your county is not on that list that Hope just read, your only option of voting is voting by mail.
Unless you reside in San Juan County, then it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
Precisely.
But everything else. Mm-hmm.
And so if I've spoken to my local county clerk, and I know that my ballot went in the mail on June 9th. If I were to receive it today, could I cast my ballot as early as today?
Yes. Yeah, so ballots started hitting post offices in Weber County yesterday, and we've already had plenty returned today.
Great. Voting is already happening.
It's happening.
Okay, I'd like to ask you to your perspective. Daniel, you mentioned voter fatigue. We hear a lot from voters who say, I just don't know enough to vote in the election or in each race in the election on my ballot. What are some resources that you could point people to learn more about the candidates or about the ballot questions or measures on the ballot?
So as the elections offices, we are a nonpartisan office, so we are not going to get heavily involved in providing information on specific candidates because that could show favoritism, and that's what we are not about. But when candidates file for office in the state of Utah, they are given the opportunity to submit a candidate profile that is posted on the state of Utah's official elections website, which is www.vote.utah.gov. So you can go to vote.utah.gov, select learn about candidates and issues, simply type in your address, and it'll bring up all of the candidates that will be on your ballot. And then you can click view profile, and then you can actually read their profile on that particular website. We do understand that a lot of people don't have access to the internet. So if you're in Weber County, if you don't have access to the internet, you can call us, and we will actually print out those profiles and mail those to you in the mail. But this is one of the really nice things about vote by mail, is it allows you to get that ballot early, and it allows you to actually review these candidates. So you're not trying to make a snap decision in the voting booth on election day. You can actually take time to research those. You can look at their profiles, you can go to Facebook pages, you can look at their Twitter accounts, those types of things. But just if you have any questions about that, just call your local elections office and they can point you in the right direction.
Great.
And Voterise has an additional resource as well too. So we actually do a Get Out the Vote campaign, GOTV for short, and we just send one text or one email reminder to our registrants who register through Voterise. We still go through the state and everything, so it's still secure. Like Daniel said, it still ends up with his office. But what it does, it's an entire nonpartisan, as we're a 501c3, voter guide on each race based on your address. So we send in our GOTV a link to this nonpartisan guide, and we work with Ballot Ready to comprise this guide. And inside of it is every single race that is on your ballot. So whether that's a Dem ballot or a Republican, it'll have every single race on there, and it will have those candidates side by side together with their pictures, with all of their social media links if they have them, as well as certain issues that you might be passionate about. So you can compare this candidate and this candidate side by side together on healthcare. And so it's really quick, it's really nice, it's a nice setup, it's a nonpartisan guide, and it actually has an interactive ballot component that people like to use. You can actually pretend to cast your vote, and then you can email that ballot to yourself or print it off. Of course, it says this is not a real ballot, but you can actually print that off or email it to you, so when your ballot does come in the mail, you can make a confident decision.
Excellent. That's an amazing resource for Utah. And some of the other resources that we've seen from groups around the state and around the nation include the League of Women Voters does the vote411.org website, Ballotpedia, VoteSmart. Those are all places where you can learn more about candidates. I want to give a shout out to, for a moment here, if you'll allow me, to a student-led voter initiative that Action Utah hosts called Know Your Vote, which you can find at knowyourvoteut.org. And that will provide candidate information in some of those cases where there are candidates, let's say for local school board. Those candidates sometimes don't fill out the voter profiles, right, at the lieutenant governor's website, and they're harder to learn about just by Googling, may not have a candidate web page even, and so some of these other resources may provide some information to voters. In addition, there's the judicial retention section of the ballot, right? And one of the resources that we point people to is the Utah Judicial Performance Evaluation Commission, which does make some recommendations to assist voters on that particular portion of the ballot. But we do encourage people to become educated voters so that they can cast a vote in every race on their ballot, and appreciate all those resources that communities provide for voters. Hope, you also have another resource or a program, the Voterise 2020 Challenge. Can you tell us a little about that and how people can get involved?
Yeah, of course. So the Voterise 2020 Challenge was started in 2018, and it's to celebrate the centennial of the 19th Amendment this year, as well as the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, and the 150th anniversary of the first ever woman voting under equal suffrage laws that happened here in Utah. So that happened in 1870, the first ever woman under equal suffrage laws here in Utah. So to bring attention to all those great historical anniversaries, we kind of looked at the data, the percentages, and how many women were voting and not voting or not even registering to vote. And we found a very dismal number. About 316,000 women as of 2018 were eligible but not registered to vote. And given Utah's unique history, I mean, we've come a long way, and a lot of women aren't participating. We're 50% of the population in Utah, yet about 25% of the state legislature is female. So we're underrepresented, and we really wanted to get women more engaged. And so the 2020 challenge is to engage other women. Of course, you can also be an ally and help register as well too, but you can sign up at voterise.org/2020challenge, VOTERISE.org. And you commit to registering 20 women. We send you out a voter registration kit with a bunch of free voter registration materials, tips, and guidelines, how to register people. And you'll also be signed up for our mailing list as well too, where we send out events when we have them again, and other things you need to know about elections and voter registration, like all the different stuff that's happening for the June primary. So I highly, highly suggest everybody gets involved, especially during this time. It also comes with a digital code that's personalized to you, so you get credit for those registrants. And that's what we've been relying on during this time as well too. So please sign up and become engaged. It's voterise.org/2020challenge.
Thank you. Such a great program, and Action Utah is very excited to be a partner in that to help with your wonderful voter registration efforts. Daniel, Hope, this has been really informative, really helpful. We greatly appreciate you joining us today and giving us this really important information. We appreciate the work that each of you does to help Utahns get civically engaged through voting. So thank you so much for your time here today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I want to just give a few final reminders that the June primary election is coming up on June 30th. They've mentioned it over and over, but the deadline to register to vote is on June 19th. That's also the deadline to update your voter registration or change your party affiliation. And the deadline to cast your ballot at a drop box or through the Postal Service is June 30th. We strongly encourage you to commit to voting, not only in the primary election, but in every election in Utah. And you can start by taking Action Utah's 2020 voter pledge today. And our team will keep you posted and up to speed with important reminders to make sure you don't miss your chance to cast your ballot. You can also check out our free voter elections resources at actionutah.org. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for watching today and hope to see you at another Action Utah event in the near future. Thanks so much.